Last Tuesday, Fort Benning shook with a secret it was never meant to face again. An encrypted file codenamed Sierra Tango 77 was stolen from a server that was not supposed to exist. The breach lit up an alarm that had slept for 50 years, and with it something else woke up, a ghost. To the young recruits he was nothing but background scenery, an old man in worn boots pushing a broom across the firing line. They smirked as he bent to sweep brass casings, his back stooped, his hands trembling on the handle of a dustpan. "Watch your step, Pop," one private laughed. A corporal waved a clipboard and barked, "Over there, old man, you missed a spot." And the janitor, Audi Murphy, only smiled faintly, shuffling along as if their words barely touched him. But they were blind. They saw wrinkles and gray hair and thought weakness. What they missed was the sharpness in his eyes, the way his hands lingered on a rifle, not to polish it, but to feel its heartbeat. When he traced the barrel of an M4, he was not cleaning it, he was diagnosing it. He could sense flaws no recruit would notice until it cost them a shot at 300 meters. His every motion was deliberate, efficient, born of endless repetition. And then there was the watch. Old Scratch, strapped to the inside of his wrist face, turned against the sun. The recruits never questioned it, but for anyone who knew, it was a signature, a mark that whispered of a unit long erased from the records. The janitor was no janitor. He was the reason the alarm had sounded. Sergeant Major Thorne was not a man who believed in coincidence. 30 years in uniform had carved him into granite broad shoulders, sharp eyes, and a patience forged in fire. He had trained prodigies and endured fools. Nothing surprised him anymore. At least that was what he thought. On the firing range that afternoon, his attention drifted from the recruits to the old man sweeping brass. Something in the motion jarred him. Audi Murphy did not bend like an old man. He crouched low, balanced, weight evenly distributed, exactly the stance of a paratrooper, conserving energy under fire. Subtle, efficient, too perfect. Thorne's brow furrowed. That was no accident. Minutes later, a recruit fumbled a magazine change. Nervous hands, clumsy reload. The drill instructor roared insults. The boy froze. But from 20 yards away, Thorne heard the janitor's voice cut through the wind, quiet, almost casual. Slow is smooth. Smooth is fast. The words were common enough, but the cadence, the rhythm was unmistakable. It was old special operations doctrine, spoken the way only someone who had lived it could say. Thorne's gut tightened. He turned sharply, studying the man everyone else ignored. And then he saw it, the battered wristwatch strapped inside the arm crystal, hidden from sunlight. That was not a quirk. That was a signature. That evening, the armory was nearly silent, save for the metallic slide of a cleaning rod inside a barrel. Audi sat low on a stool, hunched over a rifle. Movements slow and harmless. Thorne entered without a word. Boots silent on the concrete. He stopped a few feet away, watching. Minutes stretched. Finally, his voice broke the silence. "That phrase you used today," Thorne said low and steady. "And that watch, I've only seen one kind of man wear it like that. I thought they were gone." Audi's hands paused for the smallest fraction of a second, a hesitation so brief it could be mistaken for nothing unless you were trained to see it. Then the old man's hands shifted no longer, feeble, no longer trembling. They blurred. The bolt carrier group, the trigger assembly, the charging handle disassembled and reassembled in a rhythm that defied age, defied possibility. He never looked down. His eyes lifted and locked on Thorne's. Gone was the vacant expression of a tired janitor. In its place was a stare like chipped ice, unyielding, merciless. A stare that had measured men before battle and buried them after. Audi slid a single .50 caliber round across the workbench. The sound cracked against the walls like a gunshot. He tapped it once with a finger. His voice was no longer frail. It was iron wrapped in sandpaper. "Some things get left behind, Sergeant Major. Make sure you're not one of them." It wasn't a threat. It was a command. For the first time in decades, Thorne felt a chill in his blood. Fear. Not of failure, not of war, but of the man sitting before him. A janitor who moved like a predator in disguise. When Thorne left the armory, his world tilted. Everything he thought he knew about the base, about the men under his command, had shifted. He could still hear the words echoing, could still see those hands move with impossible precision. By morning, he was in Colonel Evans's office, knuckles white against the polished desk, his voice low and urgent. "Sir, we have a problem. That janitor isn't what he seems." Evans, young and ambitious, laughed him off. "He's a volunteer with a mop Thorne, an old-timer with stories. Don't lose your edge chasing ghosts." But Thorne leaned closer, whispering words that drained the color from the colonel's face. Evans's confident smirk collapsed into silence, because ghosts were real, and one of them was sweeping the floors of Fort Benning. By dawn, Fort Benning felt different. It was not spoken aloud, not written in orders, but the air itself carried a weight no recruit could name. When the janitor shuffled past the command building, Colonel Evans, who only yesterday had dismissed him with a wave, flattened himself against the wall, eyes wide, refusing to meet the old man's gaze. Drill instructors, men carved from steel, snapped to rigid attention when Audi passed by, then sagged into uneasy silence once he was gone. The recruits noticed first. They whispered in the barracks, confusion in their voices. "Why is everyone treating the janitor like a general?" one muttered. Another bolder asked, "Who the hell is this guy?" Rumors spread like wildfire. Some claimed he was a senator's father, others a retired billionaire slumming it for fun. None of them guessed the truth. The truth was eating Sergeant Major Thorne alive. He had carried secrets before, but never one that warped the gravity of an entire base. And one evening in the mess hall, the weight cracked. Lieutenant Fuller, fresh from West Point and drunk on arrogance, slammed his tray down across from Thorne. "This is absurd," he snapped loud enough for half the room to hear. "The entire chain of command is tiptoeing around a janitor." "I want answers!" Thorne's eyes lifted, weary, older than his years. "Sit down, Lieutenant. Lower your voice." Fuller leaned forward, jaw tight. "No, not until you tell me what's going on." "What did you say to Colonel Evans?" "Why is command paralyzed by a man with a mop?" Thorne's sigh was heavy, the sound of a man dragging a coffin of memory. He glanced around the mess hall, then spoke low words like gravel. "You see a janitor, that's all your eyes can grasp. But that watch he wears, it isn't a quirk. It's a uniform. 50 years ago, there was a unit so secret that not even Congress could acknowledge it. When wars threatened to spiral beyond control, when operations went so bad they had to be erased, they sent in one man, alone, no backup, no record. He would clean up the mess. They called them Watchmen. Fuller scoffed. Ghost stories. But Thorne's glare cut through him. "I've seen ghost stories bleed. The program was disavowed in the 70s. Officially, all of them were wiped out in Southeast Asia. But rumors said one survived. The first one. The one who wrote the book your West Point professors still quote without knowing where it came from." Thorne leaned close, his voice a whisper of dread. "They called him Watchman One." Fuller froze. The arrogance on his face faltered, cracks forming in his confidence. "You're telling me?" That old man Thorne didn't answer. He didn't have to. The silence was enough. The proof came the next day, carried by the thunder of rotor blades. A Black Hawk helicopter roared over the training fields, its descent rattling windows. But instead of landing on the designated pad, it touched down directly beside the firing range, a storm of dust and grass whipping through the air. Recruits shielded their faces, instructors shouted for order, but the entire base seemed to hold its breath. From the chopper stepped a 4-star general, his uniform sharp, his presence heavier than the machine he'd arrived in. General Davies, commander of Special Operations. He did not pause, did not salute, did not acknowledge Colonel Evans, sprinting forward with outstretched hand. He walked past him as though Evans were furniture. His boots carried him straight to the firing line, where Audi Murphy stood quietly watching recruits fumble through their drills. The recruits smirked, at first thinking the old man was finally about to be reprimanded. But their smirks died as Davies stopped before him, posture, stiff voice ringing with respect that carried across the silent field. "Watchman One, we received your signal." The world seemed to tilt. Soldiers blinked in disbelief. Drill instructors snapped to attention. Lieutenant Fuller looked as though lightning had struck him where he stood. General Davies turned, voice booming across the range. "For those of you who are confused, let me be clear. The man you call Mr. Murphy has a record sealed above my clearance. He is credited with preventing 3 wars, dismantling syndicates that threaten entire nations, rescuing more assets than any SEAL team in half a century. The infiltration tactics you learn here, he wrote them. And he found you wanting. Every recruit stood frozen jaws, slack hearts pounding. The janitor they had mocked was no janitor. He was a living legend. Davy's tone shifted low urgent. Your signal, Watchman One. The Sierra Tango protocol hasn't been activated in my lifetime. Why now? What do you need? For the first time, Audi straightened. The stoop in his shoulders vanished as if it had been an illusion. His voice, clear and sharp, cut through the silence. I'm not here because of the past, General. I'm here because of what happened last Tuesday at Fort Huachuca. They think they stole a file. They didn't. Cassandra isn't data. Cassandra is a person, a cryptographer. His eyes hardened and every word was a blade. She's my granddaughter. The silence that followed was a storm contained in glass. Every soldier, every officer, every recruit understood in that instant, this was not about history. This was about blood, and the reckoning had only just begun. The silence on the firing line shattered with the snap of a pistol being drawn. Lieutenant Fuller moved with startling speed, steel flashing in his hand. In one motion, he yanked General Davies forward, pressing the barrel hard against the general's temple. Enough games, Fuller snarled, eyes wide with a fanatic light. His voice cut through the air, harsh and triumphant. The lock is here, and you just lost the key. Gasps rippled through the recruits. Drill instructors barked orders. Soldiers raised rifles, but none dared shoot. Fuller held the most powerful man on the field as a living shield. Then came the explosion. A thunderous roar from the direction of the ammunition depot shook the ground. A column of black smoke clawed into the sky. The range's digital targeting system sputtered, died. Panic spread like fire. Recruits scattered for cover, shouts rising above the ringing in their ears. Amid the chaos, one man did not flinch. Audi Murphy moved with a precision that erased every year from his body. His hands shoved a heavy equipment table onto its side, creating instant cover. His voice, sharp as a whip, sliced through the confusion-torn perimeter. Davies down. Everyone else stay low. The tone was absolute command, the kind no one questioned. Even General Davies obeyed, dropping behind the barricade, fury in his eyes, but trust in his heart. From a hidden seam in his overalls, Audi drew a compact, suppressed pistol and a flesh-colored earpiece. With one practiced motion, he fitted it in place, pressing a thumb to his collar. Watchman One active, he said, voice steady. Protocol Chimera is in effect. All friendlies rally to me. The transformation was total. The frail janitor vanished. In his place stood a field commander, lethal and unshaken. Soldiers froze, staring in disbelief, their minds struggling to reconcile the image before them. Fuller and two other traitors opened fire from behind a concrete barrier round, snapping through the air. Dust burst from walls, shards of concrete stung exposed skin. Recruits screamed, some fumbling to return fire, others frozen by terror. Audi darted forward impossibly fast, his movements a study in economy. He tore an M4 from a stunned recruit's hands. His rasping voice cut through the storm. Your stance is too wide, son. You'll get tired. Watch your breathing. Even in battle, he corrected instinctively, shaping the boy for survival. Then he dropped to one knee, rifle-braced cheek pressed to the stock. The world slowed. He inhaled once, steady and calm. Fuller crouched behind Davies' pistol, aimed around the general's body. It was a hostage standoff no sane man would risk. The margin for error was non-existent. Audi did not hesitate. Slow is smooth, he murmured. Smooth is fast. His finger squeezed the trigger, but the shot did not fly toward Fuller. Instead, it streaked downrange, striking the steel arm of a target stand at the 100-meter line. The bullet ricocheted at a perfect angle, a geometric miracle. It screamed back across the range, slamming into Fuller's firing hand. The pistol exploded in shards. Fuller's scream tore the air as blood spattered across the general's uniform. Shock rippled through the battlefield. The two traitors flanking him froze for a fatal second. Thorne seized the moment. He surged forward, rallying loyal soldiers, cutting them down in disciplined bursts of fire. The immediate threat collapsed. Fuller writhed on the ground, clutching his shattered hand, his arrogance drowned by agony. Audi rose calm as ever, ignoring the chaos around him. He strode to Fuller, seized the lieutenant by the collar, and hauled him upright. His voice was low, cold iron. The explosion at the depot was a diversion, a distraction. My granddaughter's transport was routed through there. You were moving her for extraction. Where is she? Fuller's eyes darted wildly, terror flooding him. He choked out words, pointing with his uninjured hand toward a concrete hatch near the edge of the range. Service tunnel leads to the old airfield. North side. Audi released him, letting the traitor collapse in the dust. He turned to Thorne, his eyes already charting the path in his mind. They're moving her now. We cut them off before they reached the airfield. There was no hesitation, no debate. Audi moved and Thorne moved with him, a small team of hardened soldiers falling in behind. Together they pried open the hatch, vanishing into the darkness below. The tunnels were a relic of another era, damp concrete rusting pipes, the echo of dripping water. But to Audi they were as familiar as his own hands. He navigated with unerring confidence, guiding his team through the labyrinth like a man walking home. The enemy never had a chance. Shadows erupted in violence, silenced shots. Sharp commands, swift takedowns. One by one, the extraction team fell. Their ambush crumbled before it began, and there, bound but unbroken, was Cassandra, her face pale, eyes fierce. She had hidden her fear well, just as her grandfather had taught her long ago. "Audi," she whispered, voice trembling, but steady enough. He cut her bonds, steadying her with a hand that did not shake. "You did well, girl, just like your mother would have." Her eyes filled, but she held herself tall. She had been raised in the shadow of a legend, and now she saw that legend alive. They emerged from the tunnels into the sunlight, Cassandra sheltered by her grandfather's arm. The base was still smoking, chaos still echoing, but the extraction was broken. She was safe, for now. General Davies strode forward, relief etched deep into his face. His voice, thick with emotion, carried over the stunned soldiers. "Audi, the country owes you a debt it can never repay." But Audi didn't look at him. He didn't look at the traitors being dragged away or the recruits staring with wide eyes. His gaze was fixed on the horizon, cold and calculating. This was one cell general, one small piece of the machine. The list my granddaughter gave me. He tapped the data chip Cassandra had hidden in the breach. "It's very long." The legend of the janitor was finished. What stood in his place was something far older, far deadlier. Watchman One had returned. The tunnel spat them back into daylight. The smoke from the depot still curled skyward, a dark scar against the Georgia sky. Soldiers scrambled to restore order. Medics rushed toward the wounded, and the once proud parade grounds were littered with reminders of betrayal. But in the center of it all, Audi Murphy stood steady, one arm wrapped protectively around Cassandra. She was shaken pale, but her chin was lifted. She carried the blood of her grandfather, the stubborn defiance of a family that had never bowed to chaos. Sergeant Major Thorne approached, first helmet tucked under one arm, dust and sweat streaking his face. He looked at the girl, then at Audi, and gave a silent nod. Words were unnecessary. General Davies followed, striding across the scorched earth with the weight of the entire base on his shoulders. His voice cracked with raw gratitude. "Audi, the nation owes you more than I can put into words. Once again, you've done what no one else could." Audi's gaze did not waver. He didn't bask in the praise, didn't acknowledge the awe in every soldier's eyes. Instead, his attention swept the horizon, sharp and unrelenting. "This isn't over, General," he said, voice, a low rasp of iron. "The men we stopped today were just a fragment. The list Cassandra gave me is long. This base, this country, it's only the beginning of their design." Davies swallowed hard, understanding the weight of the warning. Around them, the recruits' boys who had laughed at the janitor days earlier now stood silent, their faces pale, their respect unspoken but undeniable. They had seen what legends looked like, and legends had a way of changing men forever. Cassandra tightened her grip on her grandfather's arm. "What happens now?" she asked softly. Audi glanced down at her, the faintest trace of warmth flickering through his steel. "Now we hunt." The words landed like a vow. The janitor's disguise was gone, cast aside like an old uniform. In his place stood Watchman One, a man whose work was unfinished, whose war had simply shifted into a new chapter. The soldiers who watched him knew they would tell this story for the rest of their lives, the day they discovered a ghost living among them, the day an old man turned into the most dangerous warrior they had ever seen. And yet Audi himself seemed untouched by legend. He wasn't chasing glory, wasn't grasping for recognition. He had one mission left to finish the fight his enemies had reignited. He turned his eyes once more to the horizon, expression unreadable. In that silence, every man and woman on the field understood the truth. The watchman had returned, and nothing would ever be the same. If you believe in honoring the quiet professionals, the unseen guardians who stand between chaos and order, let their stories live on. Share this video, comment with your thoughts, and subscribe to BR Veteran Stories, so the courage of men like Audi Murphy is never forgotten. Because legends are not written in books. They walk among us, hidden in plain sight, waiting for the day they are called upon again.